Half Size Me Flashback episode 101. Brought to you by the amazing Half Size Me Academy. To join us, go to halfsizeme.com/join. Hello, beautiful listeners. Today, I am going to share with you a episode from our vault. This is episode 101. And this is where I got a chance to talk to Valerie, who was a community member. She was in the process of preparing for a triathlon. She had to overcome her binge eating in order to lose weight, and how she did that through kind of focusing on improving her diet by lowering her sugar and things of that nature to make her diet a little bit better, to where she was able to get into a calorie deficit. So I hope you enjoy this. If you are a podcast premium subscriber and you want to get a chance to go back and listen again, this is episode 101. And just want to mention for our podcast premium subscribers, when you sign up, you are given the information to upload all the podcasts to your podcatcher of choice. So you do not have to go directly through Supercast. You can just put it right on whichever podcast catcher you listen on. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. And those of you that are enjoying this, again, this is 101. You have a great day and enjoy this bonus flashback episode. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have a wonderful guest today. I have Valerie. She is a Half Size Me community member, and she has her own blog, gottotryaz.blogspot.com. Valerie, would you like to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. Now, of course, I've known you for quite a while, and I know a lot of your backstory, but the people that are listening to this might be their very first exposure to you. So could you kind of give us some insight as to when your weight became an issue for you?
Sure. Well, weight has always been an issue for me, even as a young child. I think the core of my issue back then was really the fact that I was a picky eater. I never ate meat, especially red meat. Until this day, I still have never had a hamburger or a steak. But I would only want to eat processed foods, pasta, frozen pizza, cereal, and that kind of thing. But despite this, I had a pretty happy childhood. I was active in sports and so forth. And when I went off to college, I actually lost a few pounds my first couple of years. But I'd say my weight really became an issue for me in my late 20s, early 30s. That's when I married and my career was taking off. I was working on my master's. Very busy time, social time with lunches out and happy hours. And I ate whatever I wanted, and it showed. I hit my highest weight of 255 pounds when I was 31, 32, and this was up from 175 pounds when I got married at 27, and I'm only 5'2". So I knew I needed to do something, especially because we wanted to have kids. So this was around 1998, 99.
All right. And any point in there, because I know you mentioned you had a little bit of a weight issue when you were a kid, and then you did the kind of opposite approach, and you actually lost a little bit of weight when you went to college. Was there any conscientious decision to try and lose weight, or was there any attempts at any particular diet plans during that time?
No, not really. When I went away to college, I essentially got away from my food. I lived in the dorms. We had, I had the college meal plan, so I ate in the cafeteria. But I did a lot of walking to classes and that kind of thing. So I just think that, that just contributed to me losing weight. It wasn't anything that I was consciously working on. It just kind of happened.
Right. And now, I know how athletic you are now, and I know that you said you used to like to play sports, but during this time period when your weight was kind of going from, say, the 175 range up to the 220 to 55 range, were you still actively doing any of your exercises or activities that you enjoyed, or did you find that all of your life was affected by the weight gain?
Yeah, no, I just didn't have time. I didn't make it a priority. Every now and then I'd walk. I'd get into a habit of walking on a regular basis, but I was just so busy with other things, it wasn't a priority.
Okay, so cut to the point at which it obviously became a priority. You wanted to have kids. And so was there a specific moment for you where you just decided that's enough, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm going to make some major changes? Or was it a very gradual, slow progression towards you deciding to take charge of your life and your fitness?
Well, I think it really, when I turned 30, And that's when I was at my heaviest. I knew, the time clock was ticking, and I knew I had to do something about it. So that's really, why when I finished up my grad school, that's when I focused on working on my weight.
And so what were some of the beginning steps that you made towards getting your life in order as far as your food and your exercise at that time?
As far as food, I just started eliminating bad foods. The first thing I eliminated was fried foods, adding more fruits and veggies. I joined Weight Watchers at the time, and then I also tried different diets. Like I experimented with Atkins and South Beach, and I joined a gym at that time and started walking on a semi-regular basis, and I was able to get down to 225, and that's when I became pregnant with my first daughter, and then it ballooned up to 265 on the day I gave birth to her in 2001. But once I had her, I continued to focus on my weight, but it was really slow. I always say I'm a slow loser. But I managed to get down to 210 in 2007, and that's when I decided to do the physician-monitored fast. So I did that for about 110 days. It was extremely low-cal, low-carb, low-fat, and I got down to my lowest at 148. So at that point, that's when I put all my effort into exercise, and I was basically just doing cardio only. I wasn't really working on my real issue, which now I know is food, but I started spin class, swimming, and then in 2008 I started running. But that didn't stop me from gaining my weight back. I was up to 175 in 2009, and that's when we went to China to pick up our daughter because I wasn't able to get pregnant for a second time, so we opted for adoption. And then it was basically 10 pounds a year or so. And then I got up to 207 in September of 2012.
So as you look back at the part where you did the medical fast, did you feel like that was something that would have been sustainable for you had you maybe been in a different relationship with your food at that time? Or do you feel that ultimately sets you up for possible failure later because you maybe didn't learn how to eat properly during that time?
Yeah, I knew, like, coming off the fast, I knew that it's like instant weight gain the minute you stop the fast. And so to prepare for that, all I kept thinking was about exercise. I wasn't thinking about, what's the proper nutrition I need for my body. It was just all about just being active. It definitely slowed down my weight gain. I think I would have gained it a lot faster if I didn't exercise, but I really wasn't addressing my core issue.
So if you could go back in time based on all these different experiences you had and somebody was just starting out and you were talking to them based on your prior experience, if you could go back and change one thing about your course of events, what would it have been and why?
Well, it's definitely would have been focusing on my binge eating because that was really the key. When I started listening to you in August of 2012, and that's when I had the courage to step on the scale and see that I gained most of my weight back from my fast. And just listening to your podcast and taking your Binge 101 course, I knew that, that was my issue. Binge eating was derailing me from any weight loss efforts. So, to think about it, 2020, that's what I should have focused on was my binge eating because it's something that I really have done all my life. And, I'd always look at it as not as a binge eating issue, but just more like willpower. And I always just looked at it as a personal weakness and not really knowing that it's more, now I know it's more of a biochemical reaction for me, eating certain foods. But if I had known that back, way back, my life would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, because binge eating, the funny thing is there's so many different reasons why people do it. And I think one of the biggest and makes me feel the most sad for people out there, and I know I battled this, is not even recognizing you're doing it. You don't realize that the behavior that you're doing is not normal. I know I felt that way anyway. Did you ever feel like that? It was just the norm?
Yeah, for a long time I thought it was the norm, but then when you look at the volume of food that you're eating in a short time period and just how you go about it, not doing it in front of people or, you kind of question yourself, this isn't right.
And with you, the interesting thing is, and I'm glad you brought that up, is I find that there's many different reasons people do binge. There can be emotional reasons, depriving ourselves, or we're not feeding ourselves correctly. Those hunger urges are still there. So ultimately, what has been helping you battle that now? Because I know we just celebrated a major anniversary for you. So you want to tell everybody a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, basically, I got down to what my core issue was with binge eating, which is sugar. I mean, there's a lot of things that would trigger that anxiety of feeling the need to binge. But what really drove it was the sugar. So this summer in June, I decided to give up sugar, and I kind of looked at my fast and what was successful for me with that. And it was really getting in a state of ketosis where you just eat very low carb, and you basically turn from burning sugar to burning ketones, and essentially takes all appetite away. And it just made it easy for me to, not have those hunger pangs and to go off track. So that's what I did, and started in June, started with a ketogenic diet, very low carb, high fat. So I didn't feel deprived because I was eating high fat and moderate protein. And so that helped me get away from binges that were triggered by sugar. And then, here almost 7 months now, been binge free.
That is amazing. And really it is. It's something different for everybody. And you want to know what I think is amazing about that story that you just told us? You said that you went back, and so many people do not do this, and I admire the fact that you did. You looked back at the past fast experience you had, and you said you learned what worked for you, and you paid attention to the things that didn't work for you, and you kind of curtailed what you were doing based on your previous experience. Because what do most people do? They look back at something that they gained all the weight back from, and they say, "Oh, I failed," or "That was a failed attempt." But there's always a learning opportunity in there, and you obviously learned something that actually did work for you in that entire process.
Right, because I actually considered, going back because, it took me, 12 weeks. 12 weeks I got down to the weight that I wanted to, and it's like, oh, geez, should I do it again, And it's like, no, I was tired all the time on it. I didn't feel healthy when I was doing it. So I knew I didn't want to go total to the fast, but I wanted to focus on what worked. And, I just Googled up ketogenic and found all these resources on starting a ketogenic diet and just went from there.
Now, because obviously you've been having different results. Now, first off, congratulations. I mean, it's amazing that you've gone 7 months now without having a binge because, I know how you've struggled with that. And so that's an amazing achievement, something to be so proud of. And in that same time, you've also managed to lose some weight. So would you like to share with us where you are with your weight loss up to this point and what you're ultimately doing as far as your food intake goes?
Sure. Well, I started in June, and I started quite aggressive. I had went low carb, 20 grams or less per day. Just in doing that, you lose, obviously, water right away with your glycogen stores. So I lost quite a bit at first, like 10 pounds, and then it kind of leveled off. But at this time, I wasn't really focused on the scale. I didn't want to set any goals of, want to lose X amount of weight in X amount of time. I wanted to more focus on my binges and how I could change the way I eat and just focus. So that's what I did. So I lost 10 pounds right off the bat. And then it was just a slow, every other week or so, I'd get on the scale and I'd lose a pound here, pound there. Then it would stall for a long period of time. So I did hit 20-pound mark actually this past weekend, so down 20 pounds from when I started in June. I mean, ideally, I think, for my size, 135 is like probably the high range for my height. But, at this point, I just want to kind of get back to where I was after the fast. So I want to lose 40 pounds, and then I'll just see what happens from that point. I'll be about 147. And then just reevaluate. So this, for 2014, I want to focus on losing 40 pounds. And, if I can do 10 pounds a quarter, that's my goal. And if I make it, I make it. And if I don't, I don't. I mean, it's taken me this long. If it's going to take me a couple more years to reach maintenance, it will. But, I'm learning as I go.
And that's how come you'll get there, because that's your attitude. I think that so many times people are like, well, if I can't get there in 6 months or I can't get there in a year, I don't even want to, bother. But that's because this is parlays into my next question. Do you feel that this way of eating is something that is sustainable for you for the long haul? Is this something that as you're doing this, you're learning to incorporate into your lifestyle and to make this part of your everyday existence? Or do you feel this is a temporary thing to get you to your weight loss goal?
Well, I think it will evolve over time. When I first started, I wanted to go really aggressive to get into nutritional ketosis, which I measure my blood ketones with essentially like a glucometer. So I was kind of aggressive in the beginning, and I really felt the effects of that. Getting into ketosis like that, it's really mind-blowing, the energy that you get from it and the mental clarity. So I did that for a while, and then as I go along, I may go into periods where it's like, okay, I want to up my carbs. I still want to stay in a state of ketosis, which for me is, I have to do less than 50 grams of carbs. So there's times I'll fluctuate up, and then there's other times, like right now, I'm really motivated for 2014. So I kind of have a goal of shooting for net carbs of 25 to see where it takes me. But, it's my own journey. There's different gurus out there on about the ketogenic diet and say, be real strict. There's no need to go high, but I'm kind of making it my own plan. My thing is I want to eat whole foods, real foods. I want it to be tasty. And right now I'm not eating fruit because I do want to focus on weight loss, but, I'm not going to say I've given up fruit. I think it will just evolve over time.
Now, what I wanted to ask you is, in your opinion, what is the number one thing that has held you back from losing this weight in the past, and how do you feel you're addressing it right now?
Really, I think what held me back in the past was my binge eating. I would go in these cycles of being motivated and losing a little bit of weight and then getting derailed with my binges. So that's really what kept me from where I wanted to go. So I think focusing on that, I've been focusing on that for over a year now, thanks to you and the community. So I think that's been really positive.
Excellent. Yeah. And that was going to actually be my next question is what exactly motivated you to join the Half Size Me community?
Well, it's funny because the first time, I think about Weight Watchers. The first time I joined Weight Watchers, it was at an at-work program. And we had this leader who was totally awesome. She was supportive and encouraging, and I just loved going to her meetings. She eventually moved on to a private practice, so we got a new leader. And it just wasn't the same. And I found this pattern of leaving Weight Watchers and then rejoining and then coming back. So after a number of times, I realized that this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to have that same connection. So it really wasn't until I started listening to your podcast. Between your podcast and the community, it's like the ultimate Weight Watchers environment. We don't just get a 30-minute meeting. We get an hour-long meeting, and the podcast, your weigh-in segments, the Ning site, the Facebook site. So it's just all, it's 24/7 supportive environment. And it's not just one program to follow. There's such respect for each of our journeys. Some still are doing, Weight Watchers and calorie counting or low carb like I do, but everyone respects each other. And we're all at different levels too. Some are just beginning and some are like me in the middle, and then obviously a lot of people in maintenance. So we're really learning from each other.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, that was my ultimate dream, because with the idea of homeschooling and working in a classroom environment, what I loved watching is how people who were more advanced can help those that are in the middle or at the beginning, and how people that come from all different walks of life can bring so many great ideas to the table. And I think it's unfortunate, but if there's a lot of money being put into selling products and things of that nature, it has to be one way or the highway. And I don't necessarily agree with that. So I'm glad that that's been a benefit for you. All right. Well, I wanted to ask you about a couple more really important things here. First off, when in your journey did you decide to begin your blog, got to try az.blogspot.com, and what was the initial motivation for you?
Well, that's after I met you. I started listening to your podcast in August 2012, and that's when, I realized that I had gained my weight back from my fast. So I started listening in August. I think you had been on the air for 6 months. So I listened to all your shows to and from work every day until I got through all of them. And then I was just really motivated. I joined Weight Watchers in September, stepped on the scale, and then I just decided that, I would start blogging and just for myself, just to kind of put my feelings out there, to be able to track what I'm doing, just to kind of see how I was. I was also have been into competition, so I wanted a place to just kind of house all my events that I've participated in throughout the years. So that's kind of how the Got to Try AZ blog started.
And what's interesting too is I went back through your blog post, and it's just interesting to see how over time you've morphed and changed from when your blog started. That's the one thing I think is fascinating about blogs. If you go back to like the beginning and then you look at where somebody is now, you can see over time how they transitioned and changed. And I just think that's phenomenal to be able to get to see that, Do you see that in yourself?
Yeah. Even back when I started, I've always known I've had an issue with sugar, but I never did anything about it. I thought I was working on it with, as far as being on a diet and watching what I'm eating, but I really didn't click until last summer. And I think, it's funny, I go back through my blog and I read my blog posts and I'm like, oh, that's when it was. And it actually was last spring when I did an open water try for the first time, and I was so scared to swim in the lake. I just had this overwhelming fear, and I got through it. Total anxiety time for me. But then I started to think, once I got it done, I felt really good about it, and I was like, okay, what am I afraid of? Like, what's the next fear I can conquer? And it's like, okay, it's losing weight. Why am I afraid to lose weight? So that really got me thinking, and just had to be real honest with myself. Okay, it's the sugar. Don't try this 80-20 rule anymore. You got to go 100% no sugar. And that's what I did.
And, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I don't know. I think in our personal individual journeys, I think we start out in one place. And then as we progressively learn more, as we try and test new things, we start to get to a much more specific destination, and we kind of end up, curtailing what we're doing to better fit us. But I think it takes all of those bumps and bruises along the way to learn what's going to work for you. Like, I think you've probably toyed with the idea of eliminating sugar from your diet in the past, but it probably was too painful to completely let go of it, And then over these trial and errors and maybe having a little bit of a scare, you decided, okay, you know what? It's time to just do this. And you definitely could sustain it if it's something that you're committed to. And I think it's just realizing what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to do indefinitely.
Right. Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, I love watching the transitions in your blog posts because I definitely have seen you grow and change just in the time that you've been doing your own blogs. Now, in your observation and listening to others regarding maintenance, what have you noticed or what have you picked up on in regards to maintenance that you think will help you when you stop focusing on losing? Thank you so much for checking out this episode with Valerie. If you would like to finish this episode and have so much more content at your fingertips, become a podcast premium subscriber. Just go to halfsizeme.com/fan. You will have access to every single episode, including old Heather Weighs In episodes, including our Carolina series, our Sarah series, and our Jackie series, where I coach people for a longer duration, and you get to hear week by week how they change over time. There again, you can go to halfsizeme.com/fan to finish this episode number 101. You have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening. Be sure to visit halfsizeme.com. Check back often for your daily dose of inspiration because you are worth it.
The information you hear on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The host is not a medical professional. You should always consult with your doctor, nurse, or other certified health professional before beginning any diet or fitness program.